Okay, so let's unpack this. Today we're diving into something that, well, really challenges pretty much every piece of conventional wisdom you've probably heard about,
Mm.
creating wealth. If you've ever felt like you're just stuck putting in all this effort but not really seeing the results, this deep dive is definitely for you. The source material we're looking at, it kind of lays out this really strategic, almost Machiavellian blueprint for building wealth when you feel like you have absolutely nothing to start with. And the central idea is pretty intense. We all tend to think getting rich, needs capital or luck or some huge product idea.
Mhm.
But the argument here is that the truly wealthy, many of them started from zero, just
Yeah.
armed with an understanding of how the game really works.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is the stark contrast it paints. Between playing fair, quote unquote, and playing smart, the material basically argues that the usual advice, save your money, work super hard, stay humble, it's presented as, well, a foundational lie.
A lie.
Yeah.
That's strong.
It is strong. It suggests the world doesn't actually reward just pure effort. It rewards power. It rewards leverage. And that traditional path, it's framed less like a route to success and more like a system designed to keep most people chasing immediate comfort, dependent on paychecks. While a small group quietly understands the rules and kind of structures the game, the argument goes, if you don't learn how to build that power from scratch, you just stay stuck, no matter how hard you work.
Wow. Okay, that is a harsh message, especially because I think most of us are raised on the idea that, integrity and hard work, those are the keys. But okay, let's accept this premise for a moment, that the conventional path might be a trap. What does the real strategy look like according to this?
The sources get pretty specific. They talk about two paths, starting from zero. First, you've got the person who plays fair, studies hard, follows all the rules, saves diligently. Fast forward a decade, they're exhausted, right? Their savings have barely kept up with inflation, maybe not even. And they're still totally dependent on their job, their employer, the system, taxes, inflation, all the distractions. It just takes more than they ever really managed to build up.
Right. And then contrasted with that, you have the strategist. This person also starts with nothing, financially speaking, but instead of focusing on just following rules, they study human nature. They're analyzing how attention works, why people make the decisions they do, how trust and fear operate, especially in the market. And they use that sort of psychological insight to build leverage.
Leverage, okay. And the Machiavellian takeaway here, it seems really clear. Power doesn't come from just grinding it out or waiting your turn. It comes from understanding people, seeing the hidden motives, viewing the world more like a chessboard, not just a playground where everyone's nice. This strategic analytical approach, the source argues, that's what explains why sometimes people with maybe less obvious talent just shoot ahead. It's not luck, it's strategy.
Okay, so if the conventional wisdom is the foundational lie,
Yeah.
then what's the first, operational truth that this strategist needs to master?
Yeah, that brings us right to what the sources call the first forbidden truth, and it's this. Money doesn't follow hard work, not directly. It follows attention and control.
Attention and control.
That's the core rule, they say, that governs opportunity. If you're basically irrelevant, you're hard work. It doesn't matter much. It's wasted effort in a sense. But if you control attention, if people are talking about you, if they rely on you, if they need you, then you inherently control the flow of opportunity towards you.
And what about the flip side? What's the cost of not getting a handle on that attention piece?
Oh, the opportunity cost is huge, massive. Because most people, the source suggests, waste their most valuable resource, their attention, their focus, just chasing validation.
Chasing likes, sorry.
Exactly. Chasing likes, entertainment, immediate comfort. They're always playing defense with their focus, worrying about what others are doing or what the news is saying, instead of strategically directing that focus outward to build influence. If your attention is just reacting to what others value instead of creating what you strategically want people to value, well, you're kind of losing the game before you even make a move.
Huh. That idea, that attention, is the real currency, especially early on. It leads right into what they say you need to weaponize when you have nothing else. The sources are pretty blunt. Your first weapon isn't money, it's perception. How people see you determines everything else. How they treat you, what they're willing to pay you, the trust they give you. You have to build the perception before you actually have the wealth you're aiming for. There's this great example they use, the street artist.
Right.
He might not have the best supplies.
Right, maybe just basic stuff.
But he records his process, say, on his phone, posts it online. And crucially, he's not just asking for likes or pity. He's crafting a narrative, something like, I'm building an empire from the street.
Exactly. The art itself might be, decent, but the That's powerful. That narrative creates attention. Attention brings support, maybe patrons, maybe just buzz. And that support eventually turns into monetary opportunities. The source really hammers this point home. Wealth doesn't start when you deliver the product or the service. It starts way earlier, with an engineered perception, a perception that makes people believe you're someone worth engaging with, someone on the way up.
So it's about projecting that future success now.
Precisely. And this connects directly to how, the system often teaches you to kind of shy away from power. You're sort of conditioned, be nice, wait your turn, be realistic about your prospect.
Yeah, don't get too ambitious.
Right. But strategic people, they understand permission isn't usually just handed out. You have to create it.
And when the sources talk about creating permission, they use that really loaded word manipulation. They define it, though, as just understanding the rules so deeply you can kind of bend them in your favor. But let's push on that a bit. When they talk about bending rules, how do they make sure that strategy doesn't just become, reckless or lead to short-term gains that burn bridges?
That's a really important distinction to make, and the source material does address it, implicitly at least. The idea isn't about one-off deception or screwing people over. A true strategist knows that real leverage comes from predictable long-term influence. You can't build an empire on lies that collapse. So the rule bending they discuss, it's more about navigating systems that were often designed to limit mobility. Think complex tax codes or opaque corporate hierarchies.
Okay, so not breaking laws, but...
Not breaking laws, no. It's about acting strategically within the existing structure to engineer respect, influence, and ultimately advantage. It's like recognizing that the rules written for workers are often very different from the unwritten rules used by owners and builders. You need to learn the second set of rules.
Okay, I see. So it's system navigation. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Because we move from perception, that's surface level, to the difference between just effort and real leverage. The underlying structure. You have the worker mindset, right? Always chasing the next opportunity. Trading time, a finite thing for money. Stuck in the short game. Then there's the rich mindset, or the builder's mindset, as they call it. Creating opportunity. Trading assistance, perception, trust, not just time. And that's why, the argument goes, they can build wealth exponentially, sometimes while they sleep.
Exactly. And think back to that classic example the source gives, the young person working, say, a minimum wage job at a restaurant. Everyone else might be trying to impress the boss by taking every extra shift, every double, maximum effort, right?
Hustle culture.
Total hustle culture. But the strategist, they spend their time differently. They study the operations. They're looking at inventory turnover, supplier negotiation contracts, waste reduction numbers. They're focused entirely on the leverage points within the system.
Okay. Not just doing the assigned task.
Not just the task. So months later, maybe the restaurant hits a rough patch, profit issues. The strategist steps up. But not just with complaints or working harder. They come with a plan. Data-backed, an operational fix for systemic problems they identified. And boom, huge promotion, instant influence. Because they offered systemic value, not just more labor.
Right. They didn't just work harder, they worked smarter by figuring out where the leverage was, and then used that knowledge to become indispensable. They swapped low-value time trading for high-value system knowledge.
Yeah.
That totally reframes things like office politics, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not about just being nice or schmoozing. It's about genuinely understanding the mechanisms of value creation in that specific place.
Precisely. And that is the definition of leverage in this context. Using something small could be specific skills, focused attention, your reputation, critical information to control something much bigger. The sources keep coming back to this. People and systems are actually quite predictable once you understand the drivers. Learning what really motivates people, what the system rewards, that predictability becomes a massive strategic advantage.
So the core difference in mindset, it really seems to boil down to your starting point and how you value what you do have.
I think that's exactly right. The average person tends to wait for money before they start. They think, okay, I'll start my business when I save up $50,000.
The waiting for capital.
Exactly. The strategist, according to this view, says, okay, what do I have right now? Skills, attention, a piece of information. And they focus on making that valuable immediately. So if you connect all these dots, the whole goal is shifting your thinking. Stop thinking like a transactional worker, exchanging time for dollars. Start thinking like a systemic builder. Your job isn't just to find money, it's to create leverage and value that others feel compelled to pay for again and again.
Okay, so pulling this all together, this strategic matrix, the sources seem to offer a pretty clear set of takeaways, almost like commandments for the builder. They really emphasize that strategy has to replace just blind effort. And influence needs to come before income. The core rules seem to be Perception creates power. Emotion, that kills opportunity. Leverage is what builds empires. Patience wins the long game where speed might destroy things. Never compete directly if you can substitute or create a new category.
Oh, yeah.
And fundamentally, always aim for influence before you chase the actual income.
Yeah, those are the big ones. So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, the sources conclude that once you really internalize these truths, once you start recognizing the systems truly at play, you stop just playing the game. You start potentially writing the rules. You begin to see, maybe uncomfortably at first, exactly how people are subtly influenced, how money really flows through networks of trust and information, and how influence quietly decides pretty much every winner and loser.
It's a different way of seeing the world. Definitely. And maybe a final thought for you to chew on as you move forward. The sources are really emphatic about this. They state that every single wealthy person, doesn't matter the industry, mastered one specific form of leverage first. Whether it was a unique skill, commanding attention, building an unshakable reputation, or having crucial information, they mastered that before they touched real self-sustaining wealth. So maybe consider this. Which form of leverage, skills, attention, reputation, or information are you currently building right now that other people genuinely value? And how could you strategically multiply its effect? Maybe through mentorship, maybe through building a system around it.